David and I are going to present our top 5 moments from Marvel Television's Ironheart, starting now. Welcome back to the Nerd Social. I am Colin.
And I'm David.
Marvel just dropped their final 3 episodes of Ironheart. Episode 4 was titled Bad Magic. It was written by Amir, Sulaiman, and directed by Angela Barnes. Episode 5 is titled Karma's a Glitch. It is written by Cristian Martinez and directed by Angela Barnes. And finally, episode 6 is The Past is the Past. It is written by Chinaka Hodge, who also developed this series for television, and directed by Angela Barnes. Our spoiler-free logline of episode 4 is when Parker suspects Riri of wrongdoing, she knows she has to figure out the source of his powers. Episode 5 is Riri sets out to create a suit unlike anything she has ever attempted, but at what cost? And episode 6, spoiler-free logline, is Riri builds her most powerful suit yet, but she's unsure if it's enough to beat Parker and the Hood. So, David, what are your spoiler-free thoughts about these final 3 episodes of Ironheart?
I like number 4 because it's really bringing up the hype of the show, leading up to the climax. But then 5 and 6 was a total letdown. There are some good highlights after the last 2 episodes, but I expected something more. There were some surprises in the show that I did not expect. It has a lot of references and Easter eggs that I can mention about later. I'd say this show is pretty solid.
Yeah, I share your sentiments about the final 2 episodes. It was very frustrating for me, specifically about what happens in the Hood's gang, and also the post-credit scene was very frustrating. But I was not frustrated about her choice of what has happened, and we'll get to that later on. It's been established that the lack of resources and also with the loss of her best friend, Natalie, really contributed to her choice at the end. And I liked what you said about the references to the MCU and also to Star Trek as well. They did a really good job of tying those into her story. And also, it takes a village to make someone great, exceptional, and iconic. It reinforces the fact that nothing is done by just one person. It takes the whole team of people to make someone great. That's really at the core of episode 5. And finally, the introduction of a new character, which we will get to. It finally happened, but at what cost? I think it led to a lot of fan disengagement and disappointment. Plus, I would say that it led to a lot of spoilers. And it did spoil it for me as well, because I frequent YouTube a lot. And that's part of the downside of why we cover this material, is there is going to be spoilers because people want clicks, people want views. It's a cutthroat business. Whatever insider scoop there is, this will always happen. It's just the nature of our business that we're in. So having said that, David, what is your rating for the last 3 episodes of Ironheart?
I give it a 7, which is a dinner party. There were some great things about this show, but episodes 5 and 6 was a total letdown.
Yeah, I struggled with this. After I watched it late last night, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to give this as a rating because it seemed pretty low for me. But having had some reflection on it, I also give it a 7, which is a dinner party. It would have been much lower if it wasn't for those references to kind of tie it into the MCU. That really well done, tying into several movies, Civil War, Iron Man 3, Doctor Strange, it all ties in. As for the choices she made at the end, I didn't like it, but I understand it. And I think that she reminded me a lot of Killmonger in some ways, because Killmonger was a very complex character. And one of the characters also said in this show that Riri Williams is also a very complex character. We have to also remind ourselves that this is Riri's journey. And so we have to let her progress on her own terms. You know, we got to stop judging her for who she is and who we want her to be. And my hope is that Disney doesn't erase her once the MCU is rebooted, which may happen, actually, with the Avengers movies coming up. So I hope that that doesn't happen. And if they erase her, that would be a tragedy. Any other thoughts before we get into our top 5?
Let's dive in.
Okay, so if you like what we have to say about Ironheart and other content we put out there, please like, share, and subscribe for more. We really appreciate your support as we are growing really rapidly as a channel, and we thank you for all of those that are viewing our videos. We also have a website, thenerdssocial.org, which will present some articles and also some of the videos that we post on YouTube. So without further ado, our top 5 moments from Ironheart episodes 4 through 6. David, why don't you start off with your number 5 moment from these 3 episodes?
My number 5 is the revival of the real Natalie, all flesh and bones. It happened when Riri Williams met Mephisto, played by Zach Cohen. The revival of Natalie is very similar to Spider-Man comic book before the Brand New Day arc, which is after the first Civil War. When Peter lost Aunt May due to an assassination from the Kingpin, Mephisto suddenly appeared and made a deal with Peter, saying, "I can bring back Aunt May for you, only if you make this deal. I'll take the marriage of you and Mary Jane for Aunt May." Now, in this case, Riri Williams never met Mephisto in the comics. In this case, Riri Williams made a deal with Mephisto to bring back Natalie and also have the resource he needed to make the suits. There's a price to pay, and now he's working for Mephisto.
I'm glad that you mentioned about the veins, because that was really cool where you saw at the end. Again, I wasn't disappointed. I understood why she made the choices she made. My number 5 was Ironhead. I think that bringing back the AI technology and then Natalie showing the moment that Riri had with her stepfather, Gary, the origin of the Ironhead story was really great. And I think that it showed at that time that Gary's auto repair is not always negative. There's always some really great moments that happen in that garage. And it reminded her to show her the humanity that she has lost after the death of both her stepfather and of Natalie. Great emotional content to the show overall. So, David, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is when Riri fight with Zeke 2 times, because the first time we get to see Zeke fully formed. But what I mean by fully formed is that he got all the technology inside him. He's basically Man of Iron, but with the technology in his body, with no suit. And he beat Riri in the first round to a pulp, like even destroyed the whole suit. It's kind of like seeing Iron Man versus Ironmonger, except that the son beat Ironheart. But he stopped because he reminded himself, "I'm not my dad." So he, instead of killing Riri or do something else worse, he just let her go. But then the second time, Zeke learned that there's a price to pay for getting what he wanted. He ended up fighting Riri against his will. He didn't think that he would lose, but he did, because with Riri's new suit infused with magic. But what's funny though is that she beat the Zeke by hitting him in the crotch. So I'm like thinking, okay, that's something unexpected.
So my number 4 happens to be the Star Trek references that I mentioned. They placed it in a way where it was really profound. They did a Star Wars reference back in the first 3 episodes with the Padawan. That was interesting. It had that tit for tat of Star Wars versus Star Trek. Xavier mentioned how Riri was much more like Spock, although Riri didn't really identify with that. She identified more with Uhura, and then Xavier came back, well, it's basically the melanin that you're identifying with. It's not really who you are. You're much more like Spock. So that was really cool. And then the Star Trek 2 reference from the Wrath of Khan, where Xavier mentioned that scene where Kirk was at the funeral of Spock and saying that of all my travels in the galaxy, his soul was the most human. That's a reference to Natalie there. That was really well done to pay homage to Star Trek 2, but also to Natalie. So, David, what's your number 3 moment?
My number 3 moment is the introduction of Zelma Staten, who is the daughter of one of Riri's mother's best friends. She used to be a student at the school where Dr. Strange was being trained until she left because she was pregnant with Zelma. Zelma Staten was first introduced in the Marvel Comics back in 2015 in Doctor Strange, where she's basically a bookworm librarian and she has infinite knowledge, very similar to Strange. She's happened to be infected by the Mind Magus, which is a reference to that jar where Riri's mother opened. That's how she happened to get her powers from. But they changed it to say that the mother happened to have magical abilities and it passed on to Zelma. But it's nicely that they reference the maggot jar there, because that's how Zelma Stan got her powers. In the comic book, she did manage to school later on, even though the mother refused to let her go there because it's dangerous because she's too young. But it's a great introduction and portrayal of the character. So I give credit to Reagan Aaliyah. I'm very interested to see how she will grow from the show.
Yeah, she was also my number 3. I think introduction of magic was really cool. That this is the Doctor Strange references that we've been craving for. And also her mother, portrayed by Cree Summer, who's brilliant voice actor. You also see her in Abbott Elementary as well. She had the hat just like she had in Abbott Elementary, which was pretty cool. But definitely it promotes this idea of really smart and really strong Black women. And it's really good reinforcement of the characters that you can be a nerd. Back in the day, in the 90s when I was growing up, if you're a Black person, you want to be nerdy, you just want to be white. I'm very glad that the perception has changed. I also believe that there's been a reintroduction of Black nerddom or blurred as well. That really encapsulates a lot of how this community has grown for the past 30 years. And it's really a fabric of nerd culture as well. So kudos for bringing that up and for bringing that sometimes outcast community into the forefront. Really great in that regard. So David, what is your number 2 moment?
My moment number 2 is similar to your number 5 about Ironhead. Is basically reference to back in the moment in the garage, and it showed the AI memory of Gary that made her realize her humanity, which also is a scene where she processed her grief of the loss of Gary and her best friend, and it led her to be building a new suit using the car, which is a good homage to the memory to her deceased stepdad. And I like the design of the suit, which is very close to the comic book of Ironheart Model 3. So that was my number 2.
Yeah, I know that this picture is the previous suit. I'm saving it for later on, the picture of the new suit. My number 2 happens to be the big FU scene where she pounds on the truck outside of the White Castle. It's reminding me of Iron Man 3 when Tony was in the kitchen with the Extremis character, where they both couldn't use any of their tech. They could only use their wits to defeat their enemies. Nice nod to Iron Man 3. So David, what is your number 1 moment from Ironheart?
My number 1 moment is the introduction to Manifesto. I try to stay away from all the spoilers because I want to see this show blank. But what's interesting to me is that they referenced Dormammu. At first I was thinking, don't tell me they brought Dormammu in already, but it's actually Manifesto. I'm thinking, okay, that makes a little more sense because he's an interdimensional devil, because Dormammu is still trapped in the dark dimension, which we'll find out in Doctor Strange 3 coming up. This brings a new twist to Riri's story, so I'm wondering what direction this will lead for Riri's story. So that's my number 1.
Yeah, I think that he's been rumored in everything all the way back to WandaVision. We were talking about Mephisto. And now finally he appears. WandaVision came out 4 years ago. And so for me, I was spoiled, so it's not even on my list. Sacha Baron Cohen really nailed the row. Good casting overall by Marvel. And hopefully there's more to him in the future. They mentioned about how there's going to be a supernatural universe. Maybe Ironheart does fit in that universe in the future. We don't know. With the rebooted MCU. So finally, my number 1 is the new suit. And this is the picture of the new suit. And definitely it looks great. It looks like a modified version of the suit from Wakanda Forever. And because I know that she's gone through how many iterations, David? This is now the 4th iteration.
Fourth.
So it's very interesting, the progression of the Wakanda Forever suit, then the MIT one, and then the 3rd one, which is the remake of the
suit.
2nd one, and then this one now infused with magic. So it definitely reminds you a little bit of Iron Man in that progression. There's some parallels. I think that audiences need to understand they're not the same people, and we just have to accept that. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, Dominique Thorne did a great job playing Riri Williams. She nailed the character. The one thing that still bothers me, there's still people bashing at it. Some of the people who are into comic books, some within the Black community, some within the TV industry, giving crap about it. One of our colleagues showed this TikTok video saying that Tony attacked the 10 rings to save lives and right the wrongs of his company, while we have Riri Williams uses her poor upbringing as a justification to commit fraud and robbery. That's not really true. She did not commit robbery or fraud. It's just that she had no choice. As I said earlier, that Riri Williams is very relatable because Tony Stark was already rich. Riri Williams just started her life in a different circumstances because she lost her best friend, she lost her stepdad, and she's coming from a community where everyone can relate to, and they have to find their own way to do it. And she did. It shows that any people of color can be whoever they want to be as long as they know they're going the right path. So,
yeah, I think that there's definitely some resentment, maybe even some self-hate. Who knows? I think that that's why we go back to the whole idea of her being a complex character. I think also it goes back to how it's almost relatable to Killmonger. Not to his extreme, but it will take probably a lot more time to analyze and break down the complexities of who she is. And if you don't want to do all that work, then take it for what it is and just enjoy the journey. Yes, there could be some criticisms here and there, some frustrations, but it's her journey. And it's important to not internalize it and say, oh, she's bad or she's this. It's important for us to reflect on ourselves and see it from her perspective instead of just judging it for her misgivings or her grief or her weaknesses. So it does give me some perspective about her character and her character arc, much more so than a lot of other characters within the MCU. And within the 6 episodes, you're able to do that. I think that that's pretty good. I wish that it was fleshed out a little bit more so that we can explore her motivations. Hopefully she has a future within the rebooted MCU.
we need more characters like that instead of some rich person, no offense to Tony Stark, instead of a rich person who gets everything in life, but is not related to them. It's a fantasy, where Riri is more realistic, especially with the world going on right now.
So tell us what you think about this series by commenting down below. Like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. And we will see you in the next video. All right. Take care, everybody.